In today's video, I'll be talking about the occupational health and safety requirements for mariners and seafarers. The material for today's video has been taken mainly from the Australian government's Seafarers Safety, Rehabilitation and Compensation Authority. The link to the website is shown on your screens. Now, this is a 88 pages long document, and going through those 88 pages for the preparation of exams or from understanding from a practical perspective becomes a bit challenging for seafarers. So in that regards, what I have done is I have listed a number of questions and given short answers to those questions, and these questions are mainly related to the questions that seafarers are asked during the orals examination or written examination, or the knowledge of which is practically and actually required for seafarers. So I don't want to cover the entire act, otherwise it becomes a bit complicated and boring for your understanding. So I have divided the act into a list of short questions which are essential for you to know. Alright, so let's start with the first question. So the first question is, what is the oh&S Maritime Industry Act all about? So this act is about occupational health and safety, particularly to the Maritime Industry Act introduced in 1993. So this will be called the oh&S MI Act. It basically imposes obligations on ship operators to secure the health, safety and welfare of the maritime industry employees. It also imposes responsibilities on ship operators with respect to contractors and third parties that visit the ship. It requires ship operators to provide employees with occupational health and safety training and to provide all necessary information so that employees can work in a healthy and safe environment. The Act also provides for ship operators and the maritime unions to foster cooperative consultative relationships on health and safety issues. It provides a process for establishment of and encourages employee participation through a system of designated work groups and elected health and safety representatives. It provides for the inspection and reporting of serious health or safety problems and provides for the adoption of Australian Safety and Compensation Council national standards and codes of practice, as well as other codes of practice designed specifically for the maritime industry to reinforce the objectives of the Act. Now you can see there's a lot of text on the screen here, and maybe this is a lot of material for you to remember. So what I have done is I have highlighted the important bits and pieces in red, so that even if you remember these key words and phrases, that should be good enough for you to remember what the Act is all about. Who is covered by the Act? The Act applies to all ship operators and employees, contractors and third parties where the ship, which is involved in trade or commerce, is firstly registered in Australia or engaged in the coasting trade of Australia, or a ship of which the majority of the crew are Australian residents and the ship is operated by a person with the principal place of business in Australia. The Act also covers some offshore industry mobile units, but it does not include ships that voyage within one state, government ships or vessels to which the Petroleum Act 1967 applies to. What are the duties of care for a ship operator according to this Act? So an operator of a prescribed ship must take all reasonable steps to protect the health and safety at work of employees. The duty includes ensuring that the working environment is properly equipped and maintained to provide a safe and healthy environment for everyone. Reasonable facilities should be provided for all employees' welfare. Shipboard working arrangements are safe and do not risk health. Appropriate action is taken to monitor the employee's health and maintain records and provide appropriate medical and first aid services. The operator should ensure that the necessary information, instruction and training are provided to ensure job safety and that all on board are properly supervised as appropriate. What are the duties of care for an employee, that is you as a seafarer? So an employee must do their work in a way that does not risk their personal health and safety or the health and safety of others. Some examples would be: use any protective clothing and equipment provided appropriate for the job. In the galley, be alert to the potential for cuts, burns and scalds. Immediately report all accidents or near misses. Do not distract shipmates when working in potentially hazardous situations. If in doubt about whether a situation is hazardous, ask a supervisor or your health and safety representative, known as the HSR. Under the Act, employees must also help others, including the owner, to meet their responsibilities. If an employee notices something is hazardous, they should not ignore it just because they did not create the hazard. Who else has duties of care on ship? The contractors, suppliers, everyone involved in the operation of the ship must work in a way that does not risk the health or safety of the crew. So when we talk about contractors, suppliers, we are talking about all the external stakeholders that visit the ship. That could be in port, dry dock, maintenance, anchorage, so on and so forth. What is a designated work group? A designated work group, or a DWG, is a grouping of employees that enables the interest of employees in relation to occupational and health and safety to be safeguarded. The Act provides for involved unions and operators to consult on the formation of a DWG on each ship. DWGs can be formed around the classification of employees on the ship. Example, mates, engineers, integrated ratings, catering staff, representatives from each of this department can be part of the DWG. Ships with a small crew may only need one DWG. Each DWG may select one of its members to represent them on health and safety matters. How is the health and safety representative, known as HSR, selected? The members of the designated working group may agree upon themselves as to who will be their HSR. However, if more than one member of the designated working group wants a job, the relevant union must arrange an election. When the HSR has been selected, the person in command of the vessel should be advised in writing. Each crew swing will need to make arrangements for the selection of a HSR. Do HSRs get any training? The answer is yes. The HSR for a DWG must undertake a course of training relating to oh&S that is accredited by the Seafarers Authority. An operator must permit the HSR to take such time off work without loss of remuneration or other entitlements, as is necessary to undertake the approved oh&S course. All members of the crew are encouraged to attend oh&S training. These days, of course, you can also get the training on CD-ROMs or USB sticks and go through the training while you are sailing on board the vessel. What powers does the HSR have? Well, the oh&S Act confers on the HSR powers to represent and protect the DWG members in health and safety matters. In this regard, the HSR has powers to inspect a workplace, request an investigation, accompany an inspector during an investigation, investigate complaints about health and safety at work made by members of their designated working group, examine the records of the Health and Safety Committee, represent the working group in consultations with the employer on measures to ensure health and safety at work, be present at any interview about health and safety between an inspector, employer, or consultant, issue provisional improvement notices, and also initiate emergency stop work procedure in certain circumstances. If you don't know what provisional improvement notices are, I'll talk about that in the subsequent slides. What is a Health and Safety Committee? Well, the oh&S Act provides that a Health and Safety Committee may be established on the ship. A Health and Safety Committee would generally include the HSRs on board and the person in command of the vessel representing the management. It can be a way for employees to provide feedback to whoever is in command of the vessel and or the ship operator. A Health and Safety Committee is responsible for broader oh&S issues such as ensuring HSRs are appropriately trained, preventative oh&S issues, strategies to increase health and safety awareness among crew members, acting as a think tank to develop proposals to assist the ship operator in making improvements in occupational health and safety. Does every ship have a Health and Safety Committee? Well, it may be a company policy that all ships in the company fleet have a Health and Safety Committee. If not, it is up to the crew members on individual ships to decide whether they want to establish a committee. It is quite likely that crews on smaller ships may not see the need for a committee. Where a number of small vessels in the same company operate from one port, the crew might decide to have an informal Health and Safety Committee covering several ships. What should an employee do if there is a problem that could affect the health or safety? While it is a good practice to fix things that are hazardous, the employee should ensure the problem is reported to the supervisor, so it can be fixed appropriately. If you prefer, you can also get the HSR to report it. For example, you notice oil leaking onto the deck from a crane, you should immediately report the problem to your supervisor so that the leak can be repaired. However, before you do that, make sure that you segregate the area and put up warning notices so that accidents do not occur. If you are not satisfied with the supervisor is taking the necessary action to fix the problem, you should take the matter up with the HSR. If the HSR agrees with you, the HSR will take up the matter with the supervisor. What happens if the HSR and the supervisor cannot resolve the problem? Well, if the problem is too complex to be fixed on the spot, the HSR should then take up the matter with the person in command. If the master is not on board, the HSR should go to the officer responsible for the operation of the ship at that time. That could be the second in command, that could be chief officer. The oh&S Act intentionally uses the term person in command rather than master to cover situations in port when the master may not be on board. What happens if the HSR is not satisfied after discussion with the person in command? If they cannot agree on an appropriate course of action, the HSR may issue a provisional improvement notice which is called PIN. You came across this word a few slides back. The instructions for filling out a PIN are set out in the notice. Samples of a PIN are provided in the appropriate approved oh&S training course. The instructions should be followed carefully. The period specified in a PIN for fixing the problem must not be less than 7 days and must be reasonable. For example, if the ship is at sea or is operating in a remote area and spare parts are not available or specialist services are required, this HSR must allow for this in the PIN. The HSR may also specify in the PIN any temporary measures considered necessary until the problem can be fixed. When the PIN has been completed, it must be given to the person in command and displayed in the area of the ship that is affected by the notice. In comparison to the Provisional Improvement Notice, what are Prohibition Notices? Well, Provisional Improvement Notices or PIN are written directions requiring a person to fix an issue within a specified time. The inspector will include information on the notice about what must be done to comply with the law. The person who receives the notice is responsible for achieving compliance with legislation or dealing with the immediate risk. In contrast, the prohibition notices are written directions prohibiting any activity that will or is likely to involve an immediate risk to the health and safety of any individual. If a prohibition notice has been issued, the prohibited activity cannot recommence until an inspector certifies in writing that the risk has been remedied. An inspector may also recommend a comprehensive investigation by WorkSafe to determine whether the contravention of oh&S laws warrants prosecution or other action, even if notices have already been issued. What happens if the person in command disagrees with the action specified in the PIN? Well, then the person in command may ask for advice from an AMSA inspector or the local regulator. In other cases, if the ship is in Australian port or at sea heading for an Australian port, the person in command would generally contact the local AMSA office. In other circumstances, the person in command could contact either the AMSA office in the ship's home port or the head office in Canberra. Once the person in command takes this step, the operation of the PIN is suspended. AMSA will arrange for an inspector to investigate the problem as soon as practicable and make a decision on an appropriate course of action. AMSA here stands for Australian Maritime Safety Authority, which is the local national regulator in Australia. Can an appeal be made against the inspector's decision? Well, yes. If the operator or the person in command or the HSR is unhappy with the inspector's decisions on a health and safety issue, an appeal may be made to the Australian Industrial Relations Council. Can a HSR call in a state oh&S inspector, or if in overseas port, a foreign government inspector instead of the AMSA inspector? The answer is no. It must be referred to someone in AMSA. What happens if an employee is working with an immediate threat to their health and safety? Well, if the HSR has reasonable cause to believe that there is an immediate threat to the health or safety of one or more employees in the DWG, they must inform a supervisor, or if no supervisor can be contacted, immediately direct the employee to stop in a safe manner performing the work as soon as practicable, informing the supervisor. Finally, how can you contact the AMSA? AMSA contact offices for ship safety are divided geographically around Australia. To find the appropriate manager marine services, visit the AMSA website. The last slide is how can you contact the Seafarers Authority. You can contact the authority by the telephone numbers, fax email and website given or shown on your screen today. So guys, this is how I have summarized the 88 pages long oh&S Act for your understanding, not only from exam purposes but also from the practical application at sea. Let me know what you thought about this video. I look forward to your comments and feedback. I'll see you soon with my next video. Keep studying, study hard, and I'll see you soon. Bye.